So welcome everyone to our April North Yorkshire Safeguarding Children Partnership Development in Safeguarding Learning event. Steph, can you move on to the next slide and we'll make a start on some housekeeping. So just most of you are kind of well versed in this now, but just to let you know, the session will be recorded. So we kindly ask that you put your microphones on mute and your cameras off. It just helps with some of the background noise. I'll be on hand to keep an eye on the chat today, so I'll be adding some links into the chat. And then any questions, I'll kind of make sure I feed those back to our presenters. On to the next slide, please. So in terms of accessing the presentation afterwards, we do put on a copy of the slides and the recording on our NYSCP professionals page, so you'll find that in the Learning for Professionals section. We also pop that onto our YouTube channel as a recording. Give us a few days to get it edited and uploaded on, and we'll share the link with you afterwards. Best thing to do is like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you get a notification. And once the course has been completed, if we can ask you to kindly fill in a questionnaire that will come through via NYS, and that will give you your certificate of attendance. Most of you have already done it, but if you haven't, please can you pop your name and where you're joining us from into the chat bar. Just means I can get, when I'm marking the attendance, I can get everybody's details down, because often we'll just have something that will come up as head teacher, or sometimes they come up as anonymous as well. So on to the next slide. So that leads us really nicely onto our presentation around the Harmful Sexual Behaviour Toolkit. So I will hand over to Steph and Simon for the next hour. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Kat. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining our lunchtime event. So for the next hour, Steph and I are going to talk to you about the Harmful Sexual Behaviour Toolkit. I'm going to just explain a little bit more about the background and about the strategy and how we've got here, and give you some more context around the national picture and also the local picture. And then Steph will look at some definitions, refer to the Hackett model, but then really go into more detail about the toolkit. And what we really want at the end of today's session is to get some feedback from yourselves as to if you feel the toolkit would be really helpful, and give you a chance to go in, have a look at that in more detail. So thank you. Next slide, Steph, please. So to give you an overview of the national picture, as you may or may not be aware, around a third of children sexually abused is by other children, and half of those reported sexual offences relate to children under the age of 18. There's often a crossover between online and offline harmful sexual behaviour, between child exploitation, and again we'll be covering the on and offline later on in the presentation today. So harmful sexual behaviour is more commonly identified in adolescent boys, but girls and young children also exhibit signs of harmful sexual behaviour. And a significant proportion of children who display harmful sexual behaviour also have learning disabilities. So again, that is covered today in the presentation. So often children who display these behaviours experience trauma, and this includes abuse and neglect. And there's an increase in a range and number of children that see normalised behaviours in schools. So again, we're going to be looking at that more in the presentation as we progress today. Next slide, Steph. So in North Yorkshire, we looked at what is happening nationally, and as the figures that I've just highlighted to you illustrated the concerns and the worries regarding harmful sexual behaviour in North Yorkshire. So what we felt was we need to really look at this as a whole system approach, and look at it as a very much a multi-agency response. So what we wanted to do is to get a really good understanding of what is happening in North Yorkshire. Does that align with the national statistics, the national picture? What is it like for children and families living in North Yorkshire? So we could really understand what the issues were, and then make sure we've got appropriate pathways in place, and really build on good practice both nationally and internationally. And again, very much linking in with Simon Hackett's model, as I've mentioned before. Next slide, Steph. So what did we do? So we agreed that we'd have an independent audit to really get a good idea of what the current picture was in North Yorkshire. So we managed to secure some funding through the Office of Police and Fire and Crime Commissioner to actually fund the NSPCC to do a multi-agency review. So that went out to all partners. So that included police, a number of different health colleagues. It went out to schools. It went out to both primary schools, secondary schools, specialist schools and independent schools. We also liaised with internal colleagues, whether it be children's social care, the inclusion team, to really get a really good understanding as to what is it currently like in North Yorkshire. And that gave us a really valuable insight to existing systems and processes and actually helped us build on that pathway of support. So it really informed us about what it is like regarding sexual behaviour in children in North Yorkshire. Next slide. So now we've pulled out some of the key findings, and I say what we did was we had the launch that attracted over 100 people to. We then sent out the questionnaires. We then came back and looked at that data and looked at the evidence, and then really pulled out some of the key findings. So the responses, the NSPCC have done this piece of work across the country, and they were overwhelmed at the amount of responses that we got back in North Yorkshire. So it really gave us a really good flavour of what it was like in different sectors. So the responses highlighted that there's a lack of consistent data collection and shared understanding of harmful sexual behaviour. Again, some of the things around prevention, that there was really good evidence of PHSE in schools, but again, there needs to be a more consistent prevention and early identification model. So that again came out very strongly in all the findings. It also illustrated that there was disparity of understanding between agencies of the threshold of harmful sexual behaviour. And again, looking at assessments, there was some effective use of signs of safety, and again, the AIM3 approach that we use in North Yorkshire, but again, it was highlighted that further training was needed. Also, thinking about consistency, it really illustrated in the findings that there needed to be a shared language, a shared understanding. And that again, that very much linked on to the training and the development as well. So again, the findings illustrated there was an effective multi-agency development in place, but again, highlighted before, it was about consistency, it was about training. And universal or non-specified agencies don't always know where to access that specialist support. So again, the real need to have that multi-agency, that real focus that the work that we're doing covers the whole spectrum of the work that we're working alongside. Next slide, Steph, please. So journey so far, so from the research, we set up that a multi-agency steering group to look at what we were going to do. We secured the funding, went out and did the research, as I've mentioned. We had a launch event in January 2024. We shared the audit tools with all our partners. We then had a dissemination event. And then we started to look at what were our key priorities for the task and finish group. How are we really going to embed the strategy in North Yorkshire, and how are we going to launch the toolkit and all the other things to make sure it helped all of you in your work. Next slide, please, Steph. So we've developed the strategy based on the findings. And what we've looked at is very much we're trying to focus on these three key areas about understanding harmful sexual behaviour in North Yorkshire, looking at the scale, so making sure we capture the scale across North Yorkshire, but very importantly, looking at the support. What does the support look like when all agencies have identified children and young people who could benefit from additional support? And we looked at that by using what we described as the US model to help us be able to really understand that across North Yorkshire. So again, that's really embedded in the strategy that we will share with you later on in the presentation. Next slide, Steph, please.
Okay, so I think this is over to me. Thank you very much, Simon. Yeah, I think so. But please feel free to jump in. Likewise, the way I've got my screen set up, I can't see if people are asking anything in the chat. So if Kat, you could make me aware if there's anything I need to be aware of, that'd be great. So moving on to the toolkit, as Simon has already identified, we're using the US model as the basis. So this kind of kickstarts the understanding and support parts of the strategy. And today we're going to look at what harmful sexual behaviour is, but equally what it isn't, to help with the learning and to talk about the context of sexualised behaviours. Before I go on, I kind of talk about the toolkit in detail. I think it's really important to point out that the overall approach to this, as Simon has clearly said, it's multi-agency, but we're really looking at prevention, and we're really looking at healthy relationships being the bedrock that runs through this, or the golden thread, if you like, that runs through the harmful sexual behaviour work. And you might hear me say that quite a few times to get used to me sort of saying that to you. And likewise, this dovetails into other areas. So it really focuses this healthy relationships work that's embedded throughout the toolkit. It kind of focuses on around self-esteem, starting that young, embedding that into families. We talk about bodily autonomy. We talk about how to have those conversations with parents and how we can support parents in having consent conversations, that sort of thing, at a really, really early age, as well as hopefully supporting you as practitioners, so anyone from CFS workers to people in nurseries, wraparound care, schools, our educators. So the toolkit is really aimed at a wide breadth of people. And I think what is really important to say as well, this isn't a start and finish project. If we have time at the end, Simone, I'm sure, will talk in more detail about the next phases of the project and some of the things she's working on already. So this is kind of like the first element, if you like. So we thought, how can we share the information we need to as many people that need it? So the toolkit, as you can see here from the slide, it comprises of mixed media. And the idea behind this is to make it really, really accessible. So if you want to use the toolkit as a reference document, you can do. Should you want to read it from start to finish, you absolutely can. If you have a new member of staff and you want to show them some of the scenario videos that are incorporated into the toolkit, you absolutely can. The idea is it's interactive. You can pick it up and put it down if you want. You can read it start to finish if you want. The idea is it's meant to be usable. And we've been really, really lucky. And I know some of you on the call today have really helped us with this toolkit and specific elements of this toolkit. And I think now's a really good time to say thank you very much for your contributions, because you have helped shape what you feel is needed. So thank you very much for that. As I said, use it as much as little as you like. And you'll see later, we've created an interactive flip book. So the idea is you can search within it, you can bookmark it, you can come back, you can share some of the resources in there with families that you work with, or the children of the families that attend your settings. So let's move on. So what we're going to talk about today, we've touched on this a little bit. We're not going to go through the toolkit line by line. Hopefully you'll be relieved to hear, but we are, in the sense that we're going to take key elements of the toolkit and we're going to talk about them in terms of the context of the toolkit and the launch. Excuse me. We would really encourage you, if and when you have the time, to go and look at this in your own time so you can become familiar with it. I think at this stage as well, it would be really remiss of me not to put a bit of a health warning in here. And I know we all do this, but I think on several levels, harmful sexual behaviour is a difficult topic to deal with. Not only can it be uncomfortable to think about and really emotive, I mean, I think it's really difficult to think about children harming each other. But unfortunately, I know I'll be correct in saying that most professionals will likely have to deal with this to different extremes in different times. So it's just a bit of a health warning to say, this is recorded. If you want to go away and come back, please feel free. Equally, if there are questions you want to ask, pop them in the chat and we can deal with them at the end, or when we switch off the recording, if you prefer. Again, just to be clear, that we're not here to discuss individual cases either, but to move on with the work in hand, so we get you away in good time. So we're going to look at the North Yorkshire definition of harmful sexual behaviour. We're going to look at the Hackett continuum as well, which is the tool that we have adopted in North Yorkshire. We're going to look at context around why does harmful sexual behaviour happen? And again, this is all in the toolkit. As I've mentioned already, we're going to have a good look at healthy relationships and the information that's in the toolkit that represents that as well. We're going to look at the responding to worries section as well. What we've tried to do is be really, really practical in our approach. So if you have a member of staff that hasn't dealt with a certain situation or needs a refresher, they can go to it. And we're going to look at, hopefully if we have enough time, the resources themselves as well. And just to be clear, and we'll come on to this in a little bit, we're talking about harmful sexual behaviour and technology-assisted harmful sexual behaviour as well. I think it's really, really important to mention, some that as well at this stage. Again, I'll talk about some of the detail in earnest as well as being a difficult topic to deal with as well. I think what we found out through our own experience, speaking to you as practitioners, and as well from the NSPCC root and branch audit, is that this could be a really daunting area of practice. I think many practitioners, and I include myself in that, when I work directly with families, are quite often worried about getting it wrong. And this is why partly we have the toolkit. What we really want the toolkit to do is to be really clear on, if you don't know where to turn with something, if you are, for example, wraparound care, a school, a community group, whatever, that you know where to go to get that support if you want to discuss it and talk it through with someone. We kind of have to look that harmful sexual behaviour, as we'll know, often interplays with other worries, including abuse, exploitation and misogyny as well. Obviously, we're seeing a lot about that at the moment. And so we hope to help with this. So let's move on. Let's get into it. So you can see I've put the definition that we're using in North Yorkshire here. Many of you will be familiar with Professor Simon Hackett and his work. If you're not, you will be by the end of this session, and certainly when you look at the toolkit. So we've adopted Hackett definition, and we've been fortunate enough to work with Professor Hackett in some of this as well. Simone is a super fan, aren't you, Simone?
I
am. So you can see on the screen, we've said here what is harmful sexual behaviour. Well, harmful sexual behaviour refers to sexual actions by children, so those 18 and under, and young people that are developmentally inappropriate. And I've highlighted that because it's really important, if you don't know about this, to have that at the forefront of your mind. And it's developmentally inappropriate, should I say, outside of what is safe for their stage of development and harmful to themselves and others. And again, we'll talk about this a lot as we go through today, but very much talking about their stage of development, not just their chronological age as well. As you said already, it's really important to mention all the acronyms, the TAHSB as well, so the technology assisted harmful sexual behaviour. So as the definition here says, it includes both contact, so in person, and non-contact behaviours, so online behaviours, and is referred to technology assisted. This includes children and young people being harmed via the internet or social media, so both on and offline harmful sexual behaviours. And it's really important to note that not only, as I'm sure you'll all be really, really aware, is this on the increase, both behaviours need to be treated in the same in terms of the level of seriousness, if you like. So some of you who are perhaps less acquainted, some of the examples of technology assisted HSB is frequently and intentionally accessing age appropriate sexualized materials online. So for example, sending and receiving illegal images, sexual interactions where there are significant power differentials as well, lack of consent, and that's whether this behaviour can, actually exists and happens online, or then becomes what is known as a contact or an in-person event as well. I think another element to mention as well is actually becoming harder perhaps to identify this, in the sense that not just our children have access to their own devices, but also as well, we have data roaming, we have public Wi-Fi, we have lots of different variables, and I think it makes it harder sometimes to notice this. But there is a section on this as well in the toolkit. I'm just going to pause to make sure there are no questions at this juncture, because I can't see all of your lovely images.
I can't see any questions.
Nothing in the chat, Steph. I'll let you know if anything comes up.
Thank you, Kat. So moving on, equal importance, what isn't harmful sexual behaviour? And it's really hard to be definitive on this, and I think we have to recognise that as well. So what isn't it? What isn't it? So anything that's age appropriate, which involves age appropriate exploration or curiosity about bodies, it could be quite a challenge to deal with this. And sometimes I think as a practitioner, it's that awful phrase of being comfortable with being uncomfortable around some of this stuff, but really crucially knowing where to go to discuss these sort of things and to get the help that the child needs. I think it's about being brave and having professional curiosity as well, and having difficult conversations. But moving on to what it isn't, it's behaviour that's consensual, mutual behaviour between children of a similar age and development. And again, looking at chronological, not just looking at chronological age, looking at development is really, really important. So as we say in the third point here, behaviours that are part of normal sexual development and learning about boundaries and are really balanced by curiosity. I think quite often, I think especially for parents, it can be a challenge to talk about their children maturing sexually. Some people feel very uncomfortable with having those sorts of conversations. So again, we have sections for parents in the toolkit that they can either access directly, or you as practitioners can signpost them towards or lift that information to share. So that, with their young people around how to start those conversations, the sort of things to talk about. Likewise, we link to people like the NSPCC, the Lucy Faithful Foundation, who have great resources on this, and let's face it, are the experts as well. So just to be aware of that.
And ultimately on that one, sorry, someone's asked what the asterisk means when you've got children in the second bullet point.
Thank you, Kat. That is just to make really clear. We often refer to children and young people, and perhaps it's remiss of me, I perhaps could have taken that out. That's just 8. We're talking about children, so technically 18 and under, but when we're talking about special educational needs and disabilities, obviously we're talking 0 to 25. So I hope that clears that up somewhat for you. Okay. Yeah, going back to what isn't harmful sexual behaviour, you know, part of this is helping parents think about their children's sexual development before they start mentioning things, and if you like, before it becomes a problem. Okay. So the Hackett continuum, again, I've popped in there the definition of harmful sexual behaviour that we use in North Yorkshire. And this is the one that we refer to, and also we use Hackett. There are other tools available as well, but this is the one that we use. And those of you who are unaware of the Hackett continuum will see very clearly here, it's arranged kind of into red, amber, green. So looking at the left-hand side here where I'm indicating, this would be behaviour that is considered developmentally normal. Now, the Hackett continuum is a model that has been developed, as we mentioned, by Professor Simon Hackett already. And what it is there to do is to categorise sexual behaviours in children and our young people. And the continuum helps professionals distinguish between what we would say on the left-hand side, the green sexual behaviours, and what are typical for age and stage of development, moving on to the amber in the middle, which could be problematic or harmful behaviours. And when we consider things like frequency, impact, consent, and power imbalance, and moving on to the right-hand side, I don't know if you can see me indicating right-hand side, which are behaviours that are deemed abusive or violent, so the harmful sexual behaviours. Again, very much focusing on context as well of a situation. And I think this is one of the key things we would ask you to take away if you're not aware of already. So harmful sexual behaviour can take place on a continuum from the green to the red, from appropriate to problematic to violent. And one of the main take-home messages is that irrespective of the sexualized behaviour, all sexualized behaviour warrants a response. So whether it's deemed appropriate sexualized behaviour, it all needs dealing with, and that we need to consider the context within that. The toolkit hopefully helps with that, not only has it got the NYSCP guidance on what to do in the different situations, if you like, crudely putting it, the red, amber, green as well. Again, it links to people like the NSPCC and Lucy Faisal Foundation that give really good example of what typical behaviours look like. It's all very well saying green is typically behaviour, typically normal, for want of a better phrase, but sometimes perhaps if you're new to a job, or you work in a school and you're a lunchtime supervisor and you see something that concerns you, safeguarding isn't your everyday job. So you might need help in deciphering that and knowing how to respond to that. To use a scenario, because I think scenarios are really useful at times. If you consider a preschooler or someone in reception who sat on the carpet with their hands in their underwear, this looks very different to a year 11 child doing that in assembly, which again looks different to a child with special educational needs as well. But again, equally all warrant a response.
And I think as well, Steph, the Hackett model we felt really fitted well with our threshold document, didn't it?
Yeah,
and about
absolutely.
Our practice model. So therefore, very much that continuum, being really curious, but also always looking around the context. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Simone. So moving on. Why does it happen? Why does harmful sexual behaviour happen? And you'll see that I've dropped a few reasons onto the slide here. And I think it's really important to understand why harmful sexual behaviour happens and where it comes from in order to support the child who has been harmed and the child who has harmed. And again, we'll come on to this in greater detail later, but it's really important to note the language used. In this, one of the things, as Simone has already mentioned, that came out in the audit is the use of a shared language as well. So that's an area we focused on in the toolkit as well, and given some practical helps and hints as well on the sort of language used as well. I think traditionally, and still sometimes to this extent, the expressions victim and perpetrator have been used, and we're really trying to get away from that. We're really trying to get away. We're really, as it says here on the slide, we're trying to be curious. We're trying to look at why things happen through the lens of trauma and experience. And I think having the correct language, and again, we've got lots of useful links to this as well as our own guidance in the toolkit, is really, really, well, it's vital to get it right, or attempt to get it right, because I think our language shapes our thoughts as well. So, not being too sidetracked. So we've got here exposure to trauma and ACEs, adverse childhood experience, and I've kind of grouped them together because I think some of this overlaps as well. Young people who display harmful sexual behaviour, it could be that they have themselves been on the receiving end or have experienced trauma. And this could be one of the many ways that they're communicating what has happened to them. We do know that exposure to neglect and trauma can significantly impact behaviour and the understanding of what's appropriate and what isn't in terms of sexual conduct. There's a really, really interesting paper that we have summarised and we're going to put on the website today, actually. For those of you who are familiar with the Centre of Expertise on Child Sexual Abuse, we've got some of their data, and I think it's a really, really timely point to mention, actually, for those of you who are educators, and even those of you who aren't actually, they are doing some free training at the moment, and Kat's going to pop the link in the chat as well on handling harmful sexualized behaviour in education settings, and it's really, really great. It's an hour, and I said it costs absolutely nothing, and they've also written a paper with some of the key findings of young people that have themselves been sexually harmed as well. So we'll put the reference paper up online for you to have a look at, so you don't have to trawl through the whole thing. I really encourage you to read it. It's really, really insightful, quite alarming in stages, but kind of complements the work that we've done here really, really well. So that's just as an aside. So going back to what I was saying about exposure to trauma and abuse and adverse childhood experiences, the CSA Centre have done some research, and what they say quite clearly is while the behaviour of some pre-adolescent children may be problematic, it's seldom intentionally abusive. And there's been a lot of attention, and they talk about this, that's given to a link, if you like, or they describe it as a purported link between the exposure to child sexual abuse and subsequent harmful sexual behaviour. And the point that they're making this is other forms of maltreatment appear to be equal and frequently reported in the backgrounds of children and young people who have displayed harmful sexual behaviour. So worth considering as well. So yeah, we've mentioned exposure to trauma and abuse and harmful and adverse childhood experiences. So experience of neglect that I've mentioned, domestic violence in the home and family difficulties can contribute to the development of harmful sexual behaviour. Likewise, things like being left in the care of someone who's unsuitable that may have exposed a young person to pornography or the like. So moving down, peer influence and social norms and technology and online exposure, you see I've grouped together as well because I think they kind of flow into each other as well. We know a lot about peer pressure and the normalisation of sexual harassment in certain environments, such as schools and workplaces. And again, my friends, the Centre of Expertise on Child Sexual Abuse, have kind of said there are no accurate figures on the prevalence of the full spectrum of harmful sexual behaviour, but the data does suggest that under 18s are responsible for a significant proportion of child sexual abuse. And they did a study with the National Education Union, albeit going back to 2017. And what that survey really shows is a highly gendered picture of sexual harassment in secondary schools. Something like 37% of girls reported having experienced sexual harassment compared to 6% of boys. And we know this is in the news a lot because of some of the programming on Netflix around. And I think the concern is, and we know what keeping children safe in education says about a zero tolerance attitude to sexual harassment, and this is very much reflected in the toolkit as well. We give very practical advice on how a zero tolerance culture can be embedded and how practitioners can talk to parents and carers about this as well. As I said, this dovetails into technology and the online exposure. We know the viewing of online pornography and engaging in technology-assisted harmful sexual behaviour can influence young people's actions. It can influence negative gender attitude. Like I said, the studies backing this up. And while there's limited studies at the moment in TAHSB, I think it's really important to consider the changing social contract with children and how they access information as well. Something that was mentioned before, which is why we've looked at the toolkit in terms of that message of healthy relationships and promotion of a positive culture, whether that starts at home and continues within the community and at school as well. So that's one of our other key take homes. Lack of education and awareness. Again, studies show that insufficient sex education and understanding of consent and legalities can contribute to harmful sexual behaviours as well, and young people displaying problematic sexual behaviours. And likewise, difficulties with mental health as well, anxiety, depression, other emotional difficulties can be linked to harmful sexual behaviour. Low self-worth and esteem can leave children feeling vulnerable to harm and being harmed. Learning difficulties as well. Young people with learning difficulties, many of us will know, are overrepresented both in terms of displaying harmful sexual behaviour and having suffered harm through harmful sexual behaviour. And again, the CSA training that I mentioned before focuses on this as well and talks quite a lot about research backing up that young people with learning difficulties may have less understanding of acceptable harmful sexual behaviours because they have fewer opportunities, some would say, to establish appropriate sexual relationships, and as well as the learning that goes around as well. Again, CSA research found that a lot of people with learning needs as well, sometimes taken out of those sorts of lessons for intervention. So that all has an impact as well.
I think it's important, Steph, to look at that. When you look at all these different elements about why it happens, you can see there's a real interaction, isn't there? There's a real connection between a lot of these. So again, really focusing on the fact that early prevention, that healthy relationships, because otherwise it layers and layers and layers up until it becomes very problematic. So I think it's really interesting when you see those bullet points in front of you, that there's a real connection with a lot of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So like I say, be curious. We also, surprise, surprise, have a lot of great information on the NYSCP website about professional curiosity as well, and supporting with that and looking at things through the lens of trauma. I think it's really important to say at this juncture as well that the majority of children and young people displaying harmful sexual behaviours do not go on to become sexual offenders as adults. So it's really important to look at the why and look at the children who have been harmed and do the harming as equally requiring support. So Simone has brought me beautifully, thank you very much, onto the healthy relationships proportion of this. So as we said, it's a theme that runs through the toolkit, and it doesn't just cover healthy relationships in terms of romantic or sexual relationships. In terms of our children and young people, we very much focus on relationships with peers, friendships. How do children cultivate these? How do they understand what a healthy relationship does and doesn't look like? How do we help them boost their self-esteem? How do we role model this? As well as looking at the other element of healthy relationships as the relationships we have as practitioners with our parents and the children that we support as well as, like I've said already, encouraging that open dialogue as well with family. So we look at it through really lots of different guises. So like I say, why are healthy relationships important? Looking at resilience as the cornerstone of keeping children safe, which is ultimately what we're all here to do. So keeping them safe from abuse and harm. First, in them having a healthy, easy for me to say, self-image, to stop them internalizing toxic behaviors and toxic relationships, and giving them the knowledge so they can self-advocate and avoid distorted perceptions. So again, healthy and unhealthy sexual behaviours, consider this in light of context and ages and stages of development and children's life experiences, and giving the resources to support the understanding and complexity behind this. The links to child sexual exploitation, we focus on that as well. So the link between CSE and HSB, okay, because we love acronyms, as well. Actually, ironically, we have a section on not using acronyms, so I should heed my own advice. But in all seriousness, looking at those doing the exploiting, if you like, themselves could have been exploited, and this really could have skewed what their understanding of normal is. The section very much focuses on the imbalance of power that can exist if a young person harms another for control purposes, or if themselves are experiencing or have been exposed to child sexual exploitation. And also how the use of technology has increased the risk and methods of grooming and harming, and again how the social contract is changing in terms of how young people behave to fit in or to gain approval of what they think is normal. Again, a big one, very much in the news at the moment for obvious reasons, pornography and misogyny. So examining the link between the exposure to pornography, as I said, attitudes towards sex, gender, relationships, body image, and the normalcy of pornography. And I think as practitioners, it can be really hard to assess what is normal, to determine what is problematic. A recent survey, because I'm loving my stats at the moment, it shows that it's 48% of 11 to 16-year-olds have viewed pornography, and 34% of them have reported to seeing it more than once a week. So it's significant as well. Moving through, again, how to have difficult conversations with parents. And this is an area where you as practitioners, and again, some of you on the call, have really contributed to the toolkit. We had some feedback from education settings asking us if we could provide some prompts and some guidance around this. So we have done so. You have asked and we have listened. So we hope you find it useful. And again, that promotion of healthy relationships and zero tolerance within settings, which, as I've said already, many of us know is mentioned in keeping children safe in education. And as Simone has mentioned, how to promote healthy relationships and how to help parents support them from the get-go, from children being really little. So talking about consent in the form of, if you don't want to give Auntie Sarah a hug, you don't have to. Using anatomical names for body parts. So we're normalizing, an elbow, from the penis or what have you, and not being worried about using these terms and encouraging parents to have a consistent dialogue in doing so. A big section in the toolkit, and I'm very aware of the fact that you can hear me talking a lot and you'll want to see the toolkit hopefully as well. So we have a section, a very practical section, which we aim to get out of this on responding to worries. So it's essential that we respond in an appropriate and child need led way. So there's a section on this. There are also video guides, not just of the ones that you can see indicated here that we as the partnership have created, and the NSPCC have some great videos that we had on our website previously, and we've embedded within the toolkit as well. So they're still around to help with things like threshold and red, amber, green behaviours. Crucially, where to go to get support. So if that you are a school and you have an early help consultant or a senior early help consultant and you wish to have these sorts of discussions, if you wish to phone the professionals consultation line, if a young person you're working with isn't open to services and you want to get help and advice, should you want to contact a police liaison officer, it's dotted throughout the toolkit, you can't miss it. What other help is out there? Again, I've mentioned Lucy Faithful, I've mentioned the Centre for CSA, I've mentioned the NSPCC. They all have advice lines as well. And crucially as well, what does support for our children and young people look like? So if it's an appropriate behaviour, what can you do to support the learning for parents and within school? The NSPCC PANTS materials. What if there is a referral and, for example, at the red end, if you like, there's police involvement? What could happen? What sort of assessments could be done? Who could get involved? Who's involved outside of the police? Could it be the Youth Justice Service? It's about equipping us to understand what could happen so we know as practitioners and we can support our parents and families in that as well.
And I think what we've tried to do with the toolkit is try to link in all those other bits of information, so you haven't got to then be searching for different things. So is it about healthy relationships? You might want to talk to a child or their family safe about the NSPCC PANTS. There is the link in there, so therefore it all connects. So hopefully that will be so much easier for you all to use.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. So moving on, I referenced shared language before and the importance of it. As we all know, different agencies, if you like, use varying terminology, which can be confusing, and in extreme cases, it can lead to misunderstandings about risk levels. In some cases in the past, a failure to take the necessary action. So again, we have a section on this as well, and kind of hitting home things that you as practitioners will do all the time. Working on strengths with families, focusing on starting on a strong basis and building on that, being non-judgmental. Those of you who are familiar with let me start again, put my teeth in. Those of you who are familiar with systemic practice and GRACES, which is an acronym here, and understanding how our own experiences and our own judgment kind of can colour the way that we think about things, and being really, really aware of that. So there's a section on that as well as professional curiosity and challenge also. So have a look at that. And I've pulled out one of my favourite quotes from Brene Brown, so indulge me for a little while. And again, one of the principles being clear around doing what you say you're going to do. So Brené Brown will say clear is kind, unclear is unkind, and I think that's a really good message to take away, amongst other things, with shared language.
And I think as well, talking about our own social graces, it is an emotive subject. So it's important, isn't it, that when you're looking at these things, to have those discussions with your manager, your supervisor, your early help consultant, or other people, to start to look at the context. So sometimes it is really good to reflect on our social graces and how that sometimes the situation can make us feel uncomfortable. So why is that? Because that can sometimes cloud our judgment slightly. So I think it's important to widen those discussions, as well, as you mentioned earlier, Steph.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something here around as well, in with the social graces that we've mentioned here, different professional perspectives as well.
Exactly.
We're always going to get those. And I think ultimately all of us here do the jobs that we do without sounding, and too far gone. We are all here to keep children safe, and that's what we all want to do. And I think sometimes having a different perspective can be really difficult. Again, we have support on managing different personal perspectives, and how to get past that. And I think one of the key messages as well to take away today is it can be daunting and to do that, but to do that, be professionally curious, as well, ask those questions, and if you're not sure how to ask them or where to ask them, again, help is at hand.
There's plenty of people to support you.
Absolutely. So our resources, as I've mentioned, there is posting throughout. So we have different sections, as you can see on this slide. We look at specifically the guidance for education settings and community groups, and within those settings there is these little notepads which link you to other information, or give telephone numbers or useful advice as well. So you can absolutely use those. We also have a resources section at the end for more in-depth information. I've mentioned the specialist guidance already, the resource section at the back. And we also having the document that I've mentioned from the Centre of Child Sexual Abuse that will go up on the website today, and lots of videos, not just the ones that we've produced. We were fortunate enough to have Bernardo's to deliver an hours-long training session on child sexual abuse, and specifically looking at harmful sexual behaviours. So that is on the website as well, and we encourage you to have a look at that.
And I think, again, also, if you're working with other staff members and this area is quite a new area for them, as a starting point, the Bernardo's video is a really good starting point, a really good introduction to all the work. So again, I would recommend that as the go-to, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to say as well, scenario videos that have been produced by the partnership, and you'll see when you click into them and have a look at them, they're very much conversation starters. There is lots of information linked within the toolkit on how to recognise what are developmentally appropriate behaviours as well. But the videos that we've produced are really there for training and conversation starting, and to kind of look at different scenarios and see how context can impact the actions that we take and how we support children and families as well. You'll see as well, I've grabbed some screenshots as well. There's a brilliant video as well on there. I don't know if any of you can see the little shapes at the bottom, that has been produced, and we have on the website from, I think it's, Kat will tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's from I want to say National Working Group, but I don't think it is. But it's all about,
it is National Working Group. I'll pop the link in the chat.
Thank you. All about dealing with young people sharing information with you and how to respond. It's absolutely great. I'd encourage you have a look at it, either via the link or the toolkit. So this is the bit where my heart goes into my mouth because I hope that the links work. So we're going to have a quick look at the website. Hey presto, can you see that, people?
We can.
Silence is gold. No, not silence is gold. Thank you very much. So we have a new section on the NYSCP website. As you can see here, it contains the toolkit. It has some information around what is harmful sexual behaviour, as you can see here, and our little drop downs here. So have a look at it in your own time. But fundamentally, this is where the toolkit is on here. And what we've done is we've put a QR code to it. So should you be going on a family visit, should you want to look at it on an iPad or a tablet, you can scan and have a look at it. But we also have this link here. Again, this is when my heart is in my mouth. That will take us through to the flip book. So here it is when it decides to load, and you'll see it's gone straight to the last page that I was on. We've set it up that it does that. So let's think that you're using it in anger and you have a particular page that you like. When you leave it and come back, it will go back to that page. You can see the navigation pane down here. You navigate through it. It is searchable. So if, for example, I click on it and I put why can't I spell when there are lots of people looking at me? I can select, and it will take me to anywhere that says pornography. So for example, let me go to this one because this is a better page. It will take me to the section on pornography and misogyny. So you can search through it. Let me go back to the beginning again. Shows you what the keys mean. We have extra QR codes to go to different areas of the NYSCP website. You will see we've got hyperlinks. So again, you don't have to read start to finish. If you want to go straight to shared language, you can click on there and it will take you directly there. Again, we have lots of different links that will link out to different areas in the toolkits. And what we've done, going back, we've separated this into 3 different sections: understanding, responding, support, and guidance as well. So if we were to go to, for example, what we could call green behaviour, you see lots of links to lots of different resources. And you see these orange little ones here are the NYSCP created scenarios that I referenced, dotted throughout. And again here, and also a link to the Bernardo's training, as well as lots of other training as well. So that, in brief, is the toolkit. Please take time to have a look at it yourself. The scenarios that I mentioned and the Bernardo's training is also front and centre on the website. We've included some quick links as well around local support and national support, should you want to go to those quickly and you don't have the toolkit open, as well as the strategy that is referenced, and a 1-minute guide for parents as well. So,
and like Steph mentioned, the scenarios are for you to use them as a bit of a learning, a training aid, to have those curious conversations with your colleagues. It's not to look at them and that is the solution. It's about looking at that wider context. So I think, again, have a look at those, and we'll be really keen to get your views on what you think.
Absolutely. I'm conscious of time. I've said a lot of times this afternoon, this is a key takeaway, and we thought it would be useful for you to have a handy acronym, which for ages was TASH, which I quite liked, but then we included the C on it. Or if you're French, it could be Le Chat. I don't know, whatever you like. Let's call it CHAT. So to take away, to remember the harmful sexual behaviours are on a continuum, to be continually curious, and to remember context. That's another C for you as well. 8, remember healthy relationships is the bedrock of this, as the importance of having a zero tolerance culture. All sexualized behaviour requires a response to that behaviour. The importance of technology assisted harmful sexual behaviour being as equal prevalence and importance, if you like, to non-technology. And S, really, really importantly, the toolkit itself, the support and the resources contained within it. And as well as, remember, with North Yorkshire, there are lots of people that you can go to outside of your DSL, your supervisor, whoever, to get the support that you need and to talk through what can be quite a complex situation. So other than that, we'll hand over to questions, and I know Kat's got some slides as well. Just thank you very much for your time and patience today. We can't wait to hear what you think. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steph and Simon. One quick question in the chat. Pip's asked about just a very quick explanation of the AIM3 approach. It's not something that they've heard of before. Obviously, Hackett's continuum is referenced in the toolkit. Do you want to just do a very quick whistle-stop tour, or is that putting you on the spot?
No, so the AIM3 assessment is what we use within North Yorkshire, within our children's social care, within youth justice. So it's an assessment tool that we use when we're looking at the other end of the spectrum, you know, the more harmful behaviours. So again, that is our next step within North Yorkshire. So we're currently auditing what we run as AIM3 and liaising with Bernardo's to look at actually how we can develop that further in North Yorkshire. So there will be some more information coming out, Pip, around what we do with that more high-end needs, if you like. So yeah, there will be some more information about that, and that is our next step. So that nicely leads into that, Pip, so thank you.
Yeah, AIM3 and training, and it is explained in the toolkit. It's an assessment framework, and while no problem, Pip, and while we've got them on, I know we've got some colleagues from YJS on, and they've been great at sharing some information with us as well and helping us out with it. So hope we've got that right, Matt, and all. I'm sure we have.
Yeah, once again, huge thanks. Just to get you away for one, I've got a couple of slides just with a few business unit updates. While I'm waffling on, I wonder if it would be beneficial to just put in the chat one thing that you're going to do as a result of coming today, whether that's kind of have a look at the toolkit, whether it's share the toolkit, whether it's kind of looking at sharing some of the information in the team meetings. It's always nice to capture that, so if you can put something in the chat,
and it is
please.
The first launch of the toolkit, so we're really keen to hear of how you feel. It's the first time we've used that sort of more interactive flip chart or flipbook approach, so we're really keen to feel, you know, what your views are and how it will help you in your school setting and other things. So thank you.
Thank you. Georgia, you've got your hand up. You want to ask your question?
Oh, hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm not sure if I missed it because my cat's just been misbehaving. Are we able to share the flipbook resources with parents that are sort of on board? So I'm a social worker and I work with a specific case of a child sort of displaying significant HSB, and I think it would be really useful for them to read through at their own pace. So I'm just curious if that's an option at the minute.
Yes, is.
Absolutely.
It may be that you want to describe it to them and say this is a document to have a look and all different things, but it's available to them. But they don't feel overwhelmed that goodness, there's all, you know, it might be that you find some key takeaway first and then share that and then say, look, this is the whole document if you want to share. But absolutely share it with parents, colleagues, etc.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's on the website, so absolutely, but it might be, and you know the family better, it might be you want to pick and choose the elements that you share with them. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. So hopefully, just to kind of run through the last couple of slides before we get you away for 1 o'clock, just a couple of key things that are to look forward to in 2025 as a business unit. We've got a lot of stuff that we're working on this year. Next thing kind of on the horizon, we will be releasing our Being Young in North Yorkshire strategy. So we kind of like to think of this as kind of a bit like the roots from which or where all of our other strategies grow. So we will have a learning event for that in May, so you can kind of get an understanding of where it's come from and what those commitments mean to you and the work that you're doing. Later on in the year, we will be reviewing the early help strategy and we'll have a launch event on that. And we've got loads of brilliant toolkits and resources in the pipeline. So we're going to be looking at the self-harm and suicide ideation toolkit. We will be doing a voice of the child toolkit and a neglect toolkit as well. Some key events that will come up, I'll touch on the first two in the next slide, but those of you who are joining us from education, we do have the Designated Safeguarding Lead Conference coming on the 23rd of September. We will release the tickets after Easter, so just keep an eye out for those ones when you get back from your holidays. Steph, if you can move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. And if you just click on to the right of it, it should play the little video. So these are just two key things that I wanted to draw your attention to. The first on the left is we are very excited that we're going to be holding our first North Yorkshire Child Exploitation Summit on the 18th of June. I will put the link for the event in the chat in a minute when I've stopped waffling, or you can scan the QR code. The only thing I will say is this is proving to be a very popular event, and we've about 2/3 booked up on our tickets already, so we're expecting it to sell out quite quickly. So if you are interested in attending and joining us for the day, I would suggest getting yourself onto NYS, and if you search up child exploitation, it will come up straight away. And then the other thing is a date for your diary, the 16th to the 20th of June. Every year we work with neighbouring safeguarding partnerships, and we deliver a safeguarding week with loads of kind of free online training events. That will be held from the 16th to the 20th of June, and we again will be releasing the programme probably the week after Easter, so you can get everything booked in, but just to let you know, so you can get that week in your diary. On to the next one, please, Steph. Not letting you do it. This is just the final slide in terms of our upcoming learning events for the next few months. Those of you who are joining us from our early years providers, we do have the specific early years session on the 23rd in the evening. In May, as I've already said, we will be doing our Being Young in North Yorkshire launch. In June, we're joined by North Yorkshire Police for our counter-terrorism local profile. Just to kind of give you a bit of a heads up, we don't record that one. So if you do want to attend that one, we won't be able to share the recordings afterward, just because of the sensitivity of what we discuss. In July, we will be looking at that self-harm pathway, and Papyrus, that national charity, will be joining us to do a session as well. 3rd of September, after the summer break, we will be looking at record keeping and information sharing, and in the 1st of October, we will have a session based around the voice of the child. Next slide, please, Steph. Just a reminder, I'm sure there are a few of you on the call who are already part of our practitioner forum. This is something that we run every 6 weeks, and it's a really nice informal sort of Teams lunch hour where we get practitioners together. We talk about things like best practice, how we can kind of share learning. We are meeting on the 30th of April, and the theme for the meeting on the 30th of April will be looking at how you kind of capture the voice of children and young people, and the impact that has on the work that we do. So if you are not already a member of our forum and would like to join, please pop your email in the chat, and I will make sure you're added onto the Teams invite, and I will kind of add you into the group. There's no kind of obligation to come every 6 weeks. We know people are really busy, but you can be part of that group, and you can dip in as and when you feel like you've got the time. And then if you just move on to our final slide, this is always our last slide with all of our key links and QR codes that you can access our training, subscribe to our e-bulletin, and access our procedures, practice guidance, and 1-minute guides.